all right, so let me share out my slides. Try to share out my slides. I don't know where they are. Hold on one second, please. Here they are. Okay. And Zoom, share. There they are. Okay. So just to kind of go through at a high level. Oh, we're done with the belt text, right, Michelle?
That
I'm
was
sorry.
really
This stuff. I think you had a few things this week, Michelle. I think you were gonna update me. So forgive me. I'll let you share that in a minute. But Jim, let's start off with the win of the week because I think we have an awesome one, and then we can go around the horn to see if we have any others. But this was a really awesome one. So by the way, we'll go with win of the week. Hand it over to Michelle. Is Liran with us, by the way?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm here.
All right. Hey, Liran. Liran's going to give us a quick update on all the things they're working hard on. And then we'll get into our topic of the week, which is data-centric security. So with that, I am going to pause when I stop my sharing, Jim, and I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Do we have Gary on the call?
I'm here.
Gary, there he is. So last week, I get an email from our own Gary Harlan that says, "For your reading pleasure," was the email. And then below was essentially what happened. So, Gary, I thought it was a fantastic one of the week. Would you mind sharing with the group, please?
Sure. So I'll preface the whole thing by saying, what made it even more special was I was out of the office on vacation, didn't know a thing about it until after it was over. But so one of our clients, CPA client, received an email from one of the regular customers looking ultimately for some sort of a payment, which is somewhat expected, and everything looked legitimate, and they were putting in process an action plan to, whatever, make a $20,000 payment, getting ready to process that, when in parallel, we received an alert of a breach through SaaS alerts that alerted us to what was going on. Fortunately, got to them before they made the payment, but not only, so there was a breach both at the CPA firm and some sort of a spoof or known information as to one of their affiliates, one of their clients. And so it was an orchestrated attack that they were able to get in. The good news is we were able to stop them and prevented that payment from going through. But I'm not sure. I don't know how they got into our client's account. I actually never got that part of the information. I'm just getting back into the office this morning. But the good news is we have a very appreciative client. And ironically, this client is rather, how shall we say, cheap. So paying for security above and beyond some of the necessary things is usually out of the question. The only reason, honestly, that they have SaaS alerts is because it's part of our core stack.
Mm-hmm.
But,
SaaS alerts is required now.
well, for us, it's just included in our base fee. But yes, we agree.
In other words, it's not beyond the basics. It's now a requirement.
For us, we sign them up for RMM, we sign them up for antivirus, we sign them up for SaaS alerts.
Good.
Yeah, but
Awesome.
it was good. The system works.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. And it was awesome that you're on vacation, right? And all this is going on. You don't need to be there. The software is doing what it's supposed to do, and your team is doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about, so one of the things that came up at our staff meeting this morning, and you guys have sent out some information, but in the last 2 to 3 weeks, there is a large uptick in volume of alerts. It's taking much more time for my engineers to weed through and see it. And the other part is, obviously, we're not just watching the board. They look at it a couple of times a day. In this case, timing was such that we were, however it happened, we got to it in a timely manner. But yeah.
Mhm. Great.
Yeah, and I think from the previous, I don't know if it was the last week or the previous week, Chip was pretty open about what's been going on with those increase in alerts. And I think that customers across the board are seeing those, Andy, and we don't know if it's correlated directly, obviously. I'm sorry, Andy, Gary, if it's directly correlated to the Microsoft giving more information about what the threat actor gaining source code, but we definitely whatever security blogs you're reading, there is a prolific uptick in password spray attacks and different types of account compromise across the board.
Well,
So
but the other thing, 2 weeks ago, we had multiple instances on our domain of what we believe to be false attacks. We got some notices of breaches that when we went looking through the logs and looked closer, turned out not to, as far as we could tell, not to be real. We changed passwords and took some preventative measures, but I think we got it on 3 accounts over a 24-hour period.
Mhm.
Out of how many though? And by the way, maybe I could ask Liran this question. Sorry to put you on the spot, Liran, but I do know you lit up an additional endpoint. Is that statistically significant? Like, again, Gary, for you having, I'll ask you the question, and to Liran having 3 accounts out of how many?
We've got 20 or so, probably 25 active accounts. We have some extra email addresses out there.
Okay.
But they were 3 of our active employees.
Employees. Yeah. Liran, is there any chance that turning on that endpoint was, I know you guys started to filter out a lot of the noise, but is that possible of why the non-interactive logins and some other stuff that started to increase alerts?
Yeah, definitely. We saw an increase of about 10 to 20x of data volume when we turned on that initial endpoint. Just did not anticipate the sheer volume of non-interactive data that we received, and have since been working to continuously to filter those down.
Yeah.
So I've got an unrelated question, because again, we were talking about it today. We've seen an uptick in the alerts that the attackers are using VPNs to mask their source location. Is that something that we haven't, so when we see some of them, we'll take the IP and just try to figure out what it is. Google comes back, says it's likely a VPN endpoint. Is there any insight that you guys have to VPN usage?
I could look into that for you and report back in a few minutes.
Because we've seen that more and more in the blips that we're getting and the alerts we're getting.
Are you finding it as a false positive, Gary, when you look into it? Is that what you're saying?
It's not necessarily a false positive, but the alert that we're getting, the source IP, which is somebody trying to get in, is not flagging from a foreign source, which would be flagged, but is showing up as a local IP address within the US or our region.
That's a common threat actor tactic.
Yeah. Well, no, but we're seeing that more and more. I think it's becoming more prevalent.
Oh, hands down it is, because geolocation, threat actors don't want to, they're going to obfuscate geolocate.
Well, no, but I guess the question though is whether or not SaaS has the ability to flag a login through a VPN specifically as a criteria.
I got it.
The answer is
yeah,
we do, right? But keep in mind that the data that we have, there's no 100% verified VPN or any sort of IP-based data. It's what people are reporting that gets aggregated into various databases, and we do our best to subscribe to the best possible IP address database. So within SaaS alerts, if you look at the data, I don't remember if the analyze screen specifically has VPN related filters. I think it very well could, but we do have that VPN data on the events that we get.
You know, we could, again, I'm partially joking around with this, Liran, but it'd be interesting to know, like, hey, if SaaS alerts subscribe to something like a gray noise, and you guys can Google what gray noise is, would you accept a price increase? So what gray noise is going to do is look for, yeah, exactly right, Stephen. So like, then you're going to see active threat actors, known activity going on in the wild. So I'm partially joking around, but that could be the whole next level of integrating real-time threat data into SaaS alerts. But again, I don't know if that's something, Jim, that is something, a path we want to go down.
Look, we're always interested in better ways to do something. One thing we always have to balance, right, is what people are willing to pay.
Yeah.
We've always tried to keep our costs as low as possible so we could deliver a product that was also financially manageable for our partners. So we'll always have to weigh that out.
Andy, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was at a Azure security thing last week, and they said that they're using, that threat actors are now eliminating GeoIP locations as a way to profile them because they're using VPNs.
Oh, yeah.
And, so I just wanted to make sure that that was really communicated. I think this is an evolution that we have to respond with, I guess is the right way to say it in SaaS alerts parlance, right? Is to begin to look at some of that.
So
go ahead.
Quick follow-up. I looked at the last 30 days of data and looking at medium and critical alerts, and looking at VPN only data over the past 30 days, it looks fairly consistent. I don't see an increase. But one thing that anecdotally we did start seeing is are events coming through that look suspicious. And when I looked at the ASN, I did a search for it, and it was an IP. The IP address was registered to an IP address marketplace. And then I kind of Googled that, and I found that you can go to these IP address marketplaces, and if I wanted to buy an IP address from Nigeria, I would just have to pay for it, and then I would have a private IP from Nigeria. So I think, to me, this is probably the next evolution, are these like private IP addresses that you obtain rather than employ a VPN, which does get flagged.
Liran, just curious, do you guys for infrastructure that might get spun up in a certain period of time, which again is a notorious thing for threat actors, like, hey, I'm going to spin up a piece of infrastructure in AWS and attack from there. That's local, geolocated locally to obfuscate GeoIP. Is that an endpoint that you guys can detect? Your any type of detection around that? Sub 7 days, sub 2 weeks, that kind of stuff.
So off the top of my head, no. We would need anomaly detection to pick up on that sort of thing, and that's something that we are definitely investigating.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Liran, are we able to track whether a customer has Copilot licensing?
I'd have to double check. I don't remember if Microsoft, like, I think they include it in their packages.
No, you have to buy it separately. It's an add-on.
Okay, then I'd have to look at the data to tell you whether or not they pass it through on the data as far as what Copilot provides for licensing data.
I learned something last week with Security Azure. May I share?
Yes, please.
Yeah, of course.
So AI is enabling people to do marketing and sales and analyze meeting notes, and it has a great capability. Right? How does Copilot work? It uses all the data unique to your tenant, to your business, that it has access to. A user it will then answer questions for any individual user based on what data they are presented with. Well, what happens if that includes HR data or accounting data or customer private IP information? You have to segment all of this data with labeling, tags, access control links, etc. If it's not done, then it will be included in the responses from Copilot. Now I want you to think about what happens with OAuth token harvesting occurs, and they have Copilot, and they have anonymous links. Well, those are open, fair game for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
They have access to information because it wasn't properly set up in the cloud for SharePoint, OneDrive, you name it. Now, all of a sudden, AI is going to give them the answers that they need as an attacker instantaneously.
Yeah, Andy,
It's kind of shocking. Microsoft hasn't thought that all the way through.
Well, they have.
I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, right. So,
It's a
Andy,
feature.
you're bringing up
Yeah.
an awesome. Yeah, right, Stephen. You're bringing up a fantastic point. So one of the companies that I shared with Chip, we're potentially going to bring on here is around data discovery, data tagging, etc. The challenge with Microsoft is, to your point, they do have it, the capability. The challenge with it always, I shouldn't say always, it's like, how Lighthouse should have done things that SaaS Alerts is doing in terms of being able to do configurations across tenants in one place. It's the same thing here with data identification, data identification, data tagging, data discovery. You have to do it tenant by tenant by tenant, and you also have to know what those they call them taxonomies are. Is it CUI? Is it PII? Is it PHI? And on and on and on and on and on. And so it's ironic you're saying what you're saying, because today's subject is data-centric security, which is,
who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought, right? So by the way, Chad had a quick question for you, Liran, in here. I think when I say you, is there any chance of having an option where you could have EDU? I think he's saying excluded.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts there?
I just responded to that. It's something that we've heard from others, and we're looking into it now.
Okay.
Is that other things that people would want? I mean, here's the thing. It's like, I know those users are restricted. At the same time, they do have access, right? So there's a level of protection that we feel they should have. At the same time, we also understand that a school system isn't going to pay, for, if you have to mark it up to $1 based on our cost, they're not going to pay $1 per user for a student. So
when you say they have access, though, what do you think that they have access to? Because they have access to their documents and specifically lessons shared to them by their teachers. Beyond that, they really don't have access to anything, certainly not anything critical. And beyond that, conditional access or context aware can lock them into a managed device. And that managed device is probably either assigned to them, or they can be restricted from signing in on their own personal devices. If they have a one-to-one they're allowed to take home. There's a lot of circumstances under which they can't, it wouldn't matter if their credentials were leaked or anything. So they would have to say, give away like OAuth permissions or something, but also in Google Workspace, I can turn that off. So they're highly restricted in what they can do, click on, go to, see, and I basically have keyloggers on their devices. So I see what they search for, what they type in to search for and delete before they search for it. I see everything that they're doing and can get reports on it, which means I could save some money on those student accounts. I understand like the financial implications for SaaS alerts, but in EDU, I'm looking for like the holistic view, and obviously you're chopping off the most important attacks and concerns. And like locking students into something like this, I feel like is sure an extra layer, but it's not even close to the first layer of things that I would need to do to protect students and student data just based on the other tools that I already have access to. And it would be an easier thing for sticker shock and everything if I can get into more schools with more staff. The staff are scary. The staff,
Right.
we're not excluding staff. And if you need some type of proof from me or something like that to show you, you know, which devices or which user accounts or whatever are staff versus students, or if there's a discount applied, or if there's some other thing that I have to give proof of, I'm happy to like get that from the school district and provide it so that there's some proof that we're doing what you think we should be doing or whatever.
Right. Well, I would say.
I just want to jump in. Sorry, there was an example with another customer of ours that has subcontractors. And so that may be one where maybe they have limited access. Maybe that's a risk they can take on or accept, and then, you know, not have to have the same response for everything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, let's take a look at that. How big are these opportunities, like Chad, for instance, in your case?
I'm partnering kind of quietly right now with someone who sold his MSP a few years ago, and the first school is 1,200 students, but he has history with another list of schools. We're talking probably between 18,000 students. So associated staff attached to that would, you can say, a fourth of that number probably users.
Yeah.
And that's probably going to be ramped up we're doing a case study now. So, I mean, we don't technically have the client yet. I just did a really huge IT assessment, 151 data points, you know, linked to CIS, everything, huge documentation. And we're talking, I don't know what it is, 40 pages or something of work that I did to show that their current providers fleecing them. With the expectation that we're probably going to be hired. And I'm going to be providing like IT director role type stuff and coaching up staff on the back end, have, you know, the technical stuff too. And then I'm going to have a huge ability to recommend the tooling and stuff that we use, SaaS alerts included, whether it's through my account or whether it's through some other account, because I don't know how my business and his business are going to converge, but obviously bringing business to you guys at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I don't think to you who it's coming from. But yeah, it's kind of the size and the scope that is potential in the next probably 3 years, but we'll see exactly how fast that goes.
Okay, cool. Chad, whereabouts are you located?
I'm in Southeast Wisconsin. This guy I'm working with is going to be in New Hampshire public schools.
Okay, so this is the New Hampshire opportunity you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. On this side of it, yeah.
Okay.
I'm all over the place. I got a client in Chicago. I got a client and people in Colorado, and they're all over the place.
Yeah, got it. Okay, cool. Great. Well, you know what? Anytime you have anyone, this is just for chat, anyone that has specific opportunities like this that we can try to work something out on, just reach out to your account manager and we'll set up a call and, you know, review it and see what might be able to be done. But this is stuff that we've definitely been hearing, and, you know, we'll try to work out a solution best way we can.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right. So that win of the week took us a long ways around. Really good conversation. But any other wins? I mean, because you know, hearing how it's working and how it may be helping your organization certainly helps others. So, do we have any other wins of the week that anyone wants to share? All right. So let's move on. Michelle, did you have anything you want to go over?
Yep, I just have 2 quick things. We have a webinar coming up on April 9th, and that is around SaaSonomics. And pop that in there. And that's just, it's a revenue growth method that, you know, I think you guys are probably familiar with a lot of the pieces to it because Jim's talked about it. in other iterations, but this is kind of bringing it all together, taking a look at the SaaSonomics calculator. Jim, anything you want to add to this?
Show up to the webinar and we'll talk about it more.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll up and you'll find out.
Yeah. All right. So be there. That's what April 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And then the other thing I have is another enablement piece that you guys can use. I'm going to try to attach it here so you have it. You don't have to click on a link. And this actually came from our account manager, Connor, was working with a partner who wanted something like this. And it basically breaks down why you should care about SaaS, cybersecurity, into 6 easy to understand reasons that you can share with clients, prospects, just really driving home the need for this and hopefully getting them to take advantage of your services. So use that. You can put your logo on the bottom, put all your contact information on the bottom. And that's all I have.
Well, it wasn't that's all, but it was good.
It's not all. It's a lot, but I try to keep it concise because I know you guys have a lot of other stuff you want to get to. So
all right, good stuff. All right, Liran. I know you guys are working on some major stuff in the background on the product, and was wondering if you could give folks a little update on what the team's hard at work on.
Sure. So today we released our new user interface and the new user experience for connecting to new products. And specifically, this aims to make things a bit smoother for those partners that are need to connect to respond, and they don't have credentials and they want to send the link. We've also made it so that you can select specific products so that when you send them the link, they don't see the entire suite and you have to answer questions like, why don't you, I want to integrate with Slack. Why don't you do that for me? So we've heard your feedback and we've incorporated that. It's arguably the most important part of the application. So it took a lot of work and a lot of testing to ensure that you're still able to connect to new organizations. Now that's the first part of it. We wanted to get that out in Q1. In Q2, we're going to be working on redoing the way that we connect to Microsoft to make that a much smoother experience, in addition to taking some of the lessons learned in the Fortify connection that a lot of you have chosen to enable auto updates. So as we release new data and new capabilities, in the old way, you would often have to upgrade your API, which could cause some challenges for a lot of our partners who don't have, say, GA credentials. So if you enable auto updates, that's not something that you're going to have to really deal with on an ongoing basis, right? So that's coming Q2. And more importantly and more exciting is tomorrow, we are going to be turning on Fortify templates. So look for that inside the application tomorrow.
Awesome. Any comments, questions for Liran while we have him?
Yeah, hey, Liran, DJ here from ClearTip. Hey, quick question. I'm looking at the add a new organization UI now. So when I click on adding a new organization, it pops up the new window, right? But it says in there, since groups are enabled, and I assume it means in their different user groups, right? We, however, have that disabled, so we don't have any groups, and it won't allow me to add a new group or a new client without creating a group. Is that default functionality?
I'd have to, DJ, why don't we take this offline? I'll schedule time with you and walk through this, because I can't really envision what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, works.
Other questions for Liran? Okay, well, let's get on into it. Andy, your segue or your question around data and Copilot, it's kind of a perfect way to kick off our what do I want to call this, learning segment this week. And I'm just going to say that I'd love participation as I go through this, ideally. Chad, you're always awesome. I see Corey out, I'm sorry, Cody out there from HBS, and always Corey or Eric Monroe. You guys, if I'm asking and there's absolute silence, I'd love for any insights that you guys might have. All right, so first off, just in chat, maybe if you could be my eyes, Michelle, have you guys out there heard of data-centric frameworks, a data-centric security approach? Because we're so often focused on frameworks around, like, again, CIS and NIST, different frameworks that are very, I would say, certainly centric around protective and detective controls. Have you at all, any of you, started to go down the path of data-centric frameworks? Anybody out there, Michelle, that you can see?
Yeah, it looks like Andy learned it last week and Eric has not heard of it. That's all I've heard
Okay.
from.
Monroe? Okay. All right. So, so I want you to, this is really I'm going to introduce this, that you can Google it out there. There's a ton on data-centric security frameworks. And it's really what Andy kind of posed at the very highest level. And what I want you to do is imagine this world. Imagine a year from now. Imagine 3 years from now, right? Your MSP really isn't getting paid anymore for managing networks because of where the perimeter is moved to. And the only way you're going to get paid, and let's just say your MRR doesn't decline and it actually increases, but your MRR stays the same or increases, and it's solely based on your ability to do these things you're seeing across the board: identify critical data, tag critical data, understand who has access to it, control it, protect it, obviously have strong backup BCDR capabilities, strong cyber resilience to be able to operate in the event of a disaster, but still have access to key data. Imagine that world, because I think eventually it is a world we will live in, because true or false, the devices we use, X data, are pretty replaceable, are they not? Right? I mean, is that a fair statement for everybody? Right? And then, so let's start off with, so why a data-centric approach? Well, I want you to kind of walk through this scenario with me. Is everybody familiar with the law firm that, I think it's Sacramento County? If you guys can keep me honest, are you guys familiar with what happened about a month ago? Anybody, Michelle, are people saying yes or no?
No.
No?
Andy said
All right.
yes, but I'm not sure what that was.
Okay, so I'll put the URL here in chat for everybody. So long story short, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. A company called Lantech, it's an MSP out, and I think it is Sacramento. Again, don't shoot me if it's not. I'll put the URL in here for you guys to look it up. Oh yeah, Peter, you read about? Okay, yeah, links in there. Basically, what happened was the MSP had this is shocking, but a verbal contract with the law firm. Shocking that the law firm even allowed that, but had a verbal contract providing IT services and backup for the law firm. And lo and behold, and I'll show some screenshots from it. This ransomware group compromised the environment, took it down, etc. So think about that as we start to go through this. All right. So here, let's look at some of the data to support a data-centric view of way of which you might go to market. All right. So let's first look at the data. This comes from Verizon DBIR 2023. All right. Things we've talked about before, but let's just look at it once again. So often, if you think about your tooling, true or false, most of our tooling today, most of our hard cost of goods sold and in our stack SaaS alerts, certainly, because this is an awesome, I love what they're doing, but it has to do with protection and detection, and it's often around devices and assets. Is that a true statement, Michelle? And can you look at the comments in chat?
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So where we're spending our money is on protecting assets, right? Not necessarily, if you look at your stack, what you're spending money on, it's not about data discovery, data classification, data protection, etc. Okay, well, people are getting in typically not through the mechanisms we're trying to protect. In fact, the first two largest all have to do with valid stolen credentials and types of social engineering, X ransomware. Then we go into more phishing and pretexting. And you can see when we finally start to get into some type of tooling that we used around, like, scanning around vulnerabilities, it's way down here. Okay, next. We know that if they're going to get in with valid credentials, that again, XBEC and that type of an attack, the du jour is ransomware, right? And what typically do we find when it has to do with ransomware? Well, they're going to typically do what? Lock down servers, obviously, and then workstations, user dev, etc. Right? So, by the way, servers, just the way they classify them, just so you know, it isn't just on-prem servers, the way Verizon DBI looks at it, it is web application servers as well. Hence, anything that's living up in the cloud. This is Azure, obviously Amazon, etc. And obviously the same thing goes for mail. This is M365. So again, think about what tooling you have and what it's protecting. Right? The vast majority of it, again, has to do with what we're seeing the threat actors do is go after data. Fair so far? All right, so then let's go back to the attack now that we looked at the data. Well, what does the threat actor do? Okay, so what the threat actor does is goes in, locks down the server. Again, what did we just see as the number one mechanism for a threat actor? Locking down servers, attacking servers and data, right? So this falls right in line. So this is, again, like, so why should your MSP care about a data-centric approach? Because this is exactly what the threat actor is doing. Again, XBEC in what Gary shared with us today. I'm not saying don't care about those things. This is why you guys have SaaS alerts, because it's looking for those type of attacks. Thereafter, the ransomware group, right? Lock down the data, and the law firm goes on to, and hasn't attempted yet to go after Cronus, but they did name them in the lawsuit. Right. So again, it's questionable how quote unquote good this MSP is. Like, were the backups, gosh, I'm sorry, bear with me as I'm thinking about the proper term. Oh, what's that? Eric? Monroe? You're on mute.
Muted. Yeah.
I think you said encrypted, but also
segregated.
Segregated. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Yeah. Were they on a separate, VLAN or something of that nature? And then lastly, if you look at it here, this is the comment from the law firm. And again, it comes back to I'm proposing to you guys to think about things differently. The law firm themselves is saying, this is the firm bringing the lawsuit on behalf of the law firm, is that MSPs know technology really well, and businesses know their business really well, but don't know technology. There's a big difference between delivering technology and delivering cybersecurity. That's a very easy, trite way to say, but I think we're really good at, as MSPs holistically, about technology. And just based on me asking the question about data-centric security, again, this isn't a condescending comment. I want us to start thinking about things differently, right? So these lead into the next parts of the question. So let me just take a pause here so far to see, A, is this making sense? And B, are there any questions? And Corey, can you, based off of experience, I'd love what, because obviously you have a lot of it, Corey. Can you give us your thoughts?
Well, it's the last statement that I hyper focused on. I mean, first and foremost, I think there's a big issue where a lot of MSPs don't have good MSAs. That's why, conferences like lawyers like, Bradley Gross and stuff like that, I beg and plead with MSPs to talk to them, because you need a lawyer that is MSP friendly, that knows our industry, knows how things can happen, knows how we can recommend as much security. But if the customer doesn't want to pay it, right, then they're not going to pay it. And then when something like this happens, they have to point the finger at somebody, and it's never going to be at themselves. And so that's where MSPs need a CYOA with a really good MSA.
Yeah, please continue, Corey, please.
And then again, going back to that last statement, I mean, again, I've seen it. This is also why, we've always been, direct with MSPs, because I think, a lot of MSPs that I've come across, not all of them, don't get me wrong, I don't want to get tomatoes thrown at me or anything like that. I've seen a lot of MSPs, they are great at what they do. They are great at break fix. They are great at customer service, things that I'm definitely not the last one for sure, but struggle heavily on cybersecurity. How many MSPs, when I ask them, okay, who are you using for SOC services? The answer is always, not always, but a lot of times is, well, we are. My engineer is my SOC. And then it goes down this whole rabbit hole of how they're not running 24/7, how their engineers get alerted. I even had a specific individual say, oh, I used to be a firefighter, so when an alert comes in, it's a certain tone on my phone that wakes me up. Wow, right? And so, I mean, this is something that, we've always preached and talked to MSPs about is, cool, if you can do this and you can support this on your own, you need dedicated people. You need experts. This can't be someone, your security expert can't also be doing printer issues and, 365 migrations and stuff like that. And unfortunately, this is where it's coming to light.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Andy, I'll get to you in 1 second. So I appreciate the comments, Corey. Again, I'll come back to why this, I'd like everybody to start thinking about, and we're going to actually, on the cyber call this coming Monday, we'll have Brian Blakely on, who's arguably one of the best at business conversations. This guy is I won't go into who he is, but show up, but about data flow and how it impacts, the systems, processes, and things that support the business and the revenue. And ultimately, when we speak with IR firms, again, Corey, you could probably comment on this as well, but when I speak to, fortunately, I have a number of relationships, but post-compromise, when they start to get in and invariably there's MSPs involved, and they ask about, okay, walk me through data flow, walk me through critical systems, what has to come up first? High 90% of the times there's a shrug, right? Again, this is not please don't take this as a condescending comment. It's what's reality. So that, again, hence why I really want us to level up on this area. Does that make sense to you, Corey, as well?
100%. It's the not knowing, right? It is but then there's also another risk, right? When these IR teams come in, of them highlighting exactly what's said in that last comment. Because a lot of these IR teams, a lot of their revenue comes off of services as well. So they're going to be ambulance chasers and come in here and saying, well, obviously the MSP that's taking care of you hasn't taken care of you, but we can. Our tools are already here. You didn't have an incident response plan because, I mean, exactly as you said, it's either a shrug or it's everything. I need everybody back up and working right now. My customer can't be down.
Right. And that's obviously not how it works. It's the stepping stone approach of what we're going to bring up first and who's going to come up first and what's most critical. Andy.
I just wanted to add, just taking the Copilot example and applying it to data-centric, Copilot is a license that was just added in January. And we are expected in this lawsuit to be able to differentiate the impact, understand how it can be utilized against them, and implement this technology for the customer's benefit to be more profitable and take advantage of it. And I'm just trying to raise, there's no MSA that can take on someone adding licensing to their own domain and establishing a vulnerability if we don't have that kind of mechanism, change management process in place, right?
That you
How do you
highlighted.
validate it?
You highlight an awesome point though, Andy. But if you hear of a customer, this is a great conversation to have, right? I'm going to ask Eric Monroe because he's awesome with these types of, he has a very commanding presence and really good with it. Eric, like wouldn't this be a good talking point to your customers? Like, hey, are you considering Copilot or some type of generative AI in your environment? And if someone's like, oh yeah, we are definitely, we're going to start implementing and playing with Copilot. Great way to start.
So we talked to them about AI and Copilot and making sure they've got policies about AI before they do it. And then part of our MSA is that they have to do all of their licensing through us. So we don't get surprised about a license that gets added to their tenant.
Do you also, Eric, talk about like data classification and things of that nature? Like, hey, if you are going to add AI, to Andy's point, and now it's, you've licensed it. Do you put some type of, hey, then who's responsible for data classification, data identification, data classification, what can be searched, how it can be searched, who, blah, blah, blah.
That depends upon the maturity of the client, right? Half the time we're trying to get them to address their technical debt, and then we can start talking about efficiencies, automations, and productivity, and then we can start talking about the data classifications and PII. And
yeah, if I could push back on you just for a second, we'll move on. But my point is, it doesn't matter how mature they are. If they get Copilot through you, to Andy's point, if somebody isn't classifying that data and it's searchable, then now all of a sudden it's going to be part of a potential data breach. Like, that's what I'm saying is that, are you guys starting to think about those things?
That's a great point. I think we need to really understand, who has, based upon their rights to their SharePoint and all of the data within the 365 tenant, what could be accessed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to bring up those questions in a moment to everybody. So this is the part of as our world continues to change constantly, if you've been in this field, I've been in it for 25 years, and I'm sure some of you have too, right? It's this constant changing and changing. We have to change and change and change with it. So this point of, if you have Copilot, well, when are you doing, this conversation around data inventory? Is it during onboarding? Is there a discussion about it? If there's no policies, to Eric, good for you. What are the policies in your organization around, especially you being in California, right? CCPA, all right, but data discovery, data classification, who's responsible, who has access, are there notification policies, et cetera, in the organization? How are you discovering the data, right? Is it through conversations? Is it through data discovery solutions? And who's involved, right? Andy.
I just wanted to add as well, is that a lot of businesses now, their customers' data is what they're performing operations on. And it can have a dramatic impact if they support multiple customers. And they have to deal with all the classifications, taxonomy, as you referred to it. Or what happens if one of our clients' customers experiences a breach? What's your course of action then? I mean, this data-centric approach mushrooms very rapidly, depending on the nature of the customer that we're attempting to serve and their relationship with their customers.
Can I guys show you something I started working on? I'm not saying I'm the next, so if I could just joke around, I'm not the next Sunil Yu with the cyber defense matrix. I'm going to share my desktop, and as you guys know, that's always dangerous with me. But I did start to create. I'm wondering if this could be helpful if I work on this like with Ryan Weeks to a degree. That Andy, to your like I started to think about, okay, if we're going to sit down with a customer or a prospect, again, it's always like, well, where's your data? If you ask a customer that, right, Eric Monroe, they're going to look at you like, what the F are you talking about? Where's my data? And what data is important, right? You
Well, we
kind of
find
have,
out new places every VCIO meeting. Oh, you started a Dropbox account? Oh, shit.
right, and that's the whole data flow, right? That's the cloud, the whole point of, we're going to get to in a minute, of how data continuously moves, and where we're going to start to have to think about following that bouncing ball of critical data. But would something like this be helpful? And the intent was like, I kind of stole off Sunil, was in a conversation with, to prompt them, right? What are the categories, right, that could possibly, and there's probably more, right?
Andrew,
And
I'm going to say that this is going to have to be evolving because AI is going to change how data is manipulated, sorted, and acted on.
yeah, and no doubt. And we know with, as Eric Monroe just said, like with cloud third party, with shadow IT resources, it's not just AI, right? It's, let's just say someone doesn't have AI. It's the ability that we move data so easily. Forget AI for a second. It's how, we thought the data was here, and then the data is over here, right? And we had a compromise over here. Well, we didn't know the data was moved over here, right? Anyway, is this helpful at all? Could this be helpful? Do you guys feel? Just yes or no's and chat. It's fine. And what are they saying, Michelle?
It's like
I
data.
think worthy of a topic, a whole session just on this.
Yeah, like kind of expanding that, of how to build some type of discovery framework. And so I put a slide together just so you guys could have it on, what are the components. You're probably doing some of this today. But like encryption. But these are the components to data-centric security. And then these are the challenges we have with data-centric security. Number one, and just like any inventory, isn't it always true? That's the number one, probably the hardest thing, right? Where the heck is it? Right? Then who has access to it? And how do they have access to it? Right? And when do they have access to it? Right? And this is where we start to get into data governance is really data mapping, right? Like, again, where's the data? Where's it going? Who's governing where it goes, etc. Comments, questions on this at all? Do we have any, Michelle? Just look real quick.
My perception from the Microsoft Azure thing that I was in is that they said, oh yeah, you need to deal with this. And that the point was, they expect the organization to have this done already. Or that it is a static model. And I'm thinking both things are not true, right? It is not a static model for data security. And it is never fully managed because people work around it to get solutions.
Well, and again, we're, Eric V, you bring up a good point. Like, those are the, right, those are the standard. Is the data public? Is it internal? Is it sensitive? And those are very high level things. But when you say that to a customer, if we're not prompting them on specific things, they're going to more than likely shrug their shoulders. I don't know. Is it public? Is it internal? Like, we've got to, I think, get down to specifically their use cases of, again, what runs the business, what drives revenue, who shares that information, right, in each of those areas.
Can we back this up a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Or there's typical software companies are going to deliver capability before security. So maybe us as IT professionals, we say before we deploy any capability, we have to, you know, define what the security is before it gets out to our users.
Can you unpack that just a hair more for me, Eric? What you
Yeah,
mean?
so, you know, constantly our users are finding new M365 apps and tools and ways of communicating. And we don't have any governance around these new capabilities, right? Oh, this new tool is going to open up all these different shares in M365, right? You know, before we start using these capabilities that are available, you know, don't we really need to define it and set parameters and policies around it?
It's an excellent, you know, it's an excellent point. And right, and that's probably all the way back, if we could roll back time into what we know today into onboarding. It's like, hey, this is how we work, right? This is part, as you said, Eric, what's included in our MSA and scopes of work and what's not. Hey, if you decide you're going to start, you know, if you say you want full control of what your users can and can't do, this is the inventory of things we do support. Anything above and beyond that, if you guys start turning on lights and doing stuff, and so it's a great point.
Right. There was a recent tool that our guys started using, and it was our alerts are popping up. Hey, we got new 365 shares coming up, and they're auto made based upon whatever this tool was doing, and sent a little shockwave down to us.
Right. Interesting. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour. I really appreciate everybody's participation. We can definitely, did you guys find this interesting in terms of discussing something from a different viewpoint of what we're normally doing as MSPs? Was this helpful?
Your future prediction about having to be data, that our compensation will be tied not only to user security, but data security is spot on. And because of the device, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, I think that's where we're headed, Andy. I think that's why I wanted to share it with you all, that I'd love for you guys to be out ahead of the curve and differentiate yourselves. And I think the faster we can all as a group go to that spot where the puck is going, they say in hockey, I think the better off we'll be. So, yeah.
And,
so
yeah.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, so with that, I know we're at the top. Michelle, team, everybody have a fantastic week, and we'll look forward to seeing you on this coming Thursday. And if you want to join the cyber call Mondays.
Yeah, next week, Jim and I will be at Robin, so I don't know what the schedule will. You'll be here, Andrew. That's all that matters.
I will be here. I'll be definitely on. So take care, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.